yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, definitely excited to be here. I appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, Austin Matthews. I'm actually in charge of a company called EverCommerce. It's underneath, or sorry, EverPro. It's underneath EverCommerce. It's pretty cool. It's a bunch of smaller companies that are growing and really are focused on servicing the home service industry. So like you think plumbing, HVAC, electric companies. So we have a lot of different companies in there with software that helps those guys, helps them grow, helps them get insight in their company, and yeah. So I'm kind of somebody that started out in sales, a long time ago, and found my way in sales operations, and I'm loving every day of it.
Fantastic. You held roles from account executive to director of sales operations currently. You've been there, done that. What was the defining moment that led you to specialize in sales ops? There's no school or college to learn sales operations. What has kept you passionate about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, yeah, so I asked the same thing of like salespeople because I feel like people oftentimes in these roles just like fall into it in some way or another. But I'll kind of start back at the beginning. I've always been really interested. I mean, I studied English in college, but I've always had a technical side. I was always like really interested in programming and stuff like that. And I'd kind of been in retail sales and stuff like that. I had originally wanted to be a developer. I wanted to like learn how to program. So I was teaching myself that, and I was like, hey, how do I get my foot in the door just to work at a tech company? Like, how do I get in there? Back in the day, and I saw this role, just entry level like BDR position, and I was like, sure, that looks cool. I'll just try that. I ended up going in there, and like my first kind of week listening to people on the phones, I was like, man, I could do this. I could do really well at this. And I jumped on. I did. I was a really successful salesperson. I made it to AE very quickly. It's probably not even a great thing that I did that so quickly because I think being a BDR is really important in sales. But and yeah, I worked my way up to manager. But I was kind of always this person that like really still had that technical side that was really interesting to me. I was often the person where like all the other reps would come to my desk to ask me questions about like the product and about like how certain like the tools we were using and stuff like worked or if they were stuck on something. I just was kind of like the go-to desk for that. So naturally I like, went into management. I was leading the sales teams and stuff, but again, it was just always like known as sort of the really kind of technical sales leader. And the president at that time came to me and was like, hey, we need somebody to be in sales operations, just like, typical story, like, right. Everybody was building really focused on getting salespeople and stuff like that. And we're not super focused on like operations and how we're setting up things in the best way. We just didn't have somebody for that role. And he's like, you would be great for this role. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I'm just like, I'm always open to new adventures and learning new things. So I jumped on it. And from day one, I just was in love with it. It was like a perfect mix between, my sales side, which I love, sales, but the technical side. So it was like scratching this itch that I never really, fully got to itch just being in sales. So it's like this perfect world of me to live in both of these things. But to answer your last part of the question, they were like, what keeps me passionate besides that of like, it just is perfect for me in both those worlds. I would say, every day, and I'm sure this speaks to anybody in operations, but every day is a little bit different, right? Like I couldn't stand being in a job where every day I wake up and just do the same thing all the time. Every day I wake up and I'm dealing with a new issue, new problem, or trying to create a new process, or helping folks, or jumping on a call to get my perspective in on a solution, whatever it might be. But every day is different, and every day poses new problems that need solutions, and that's where I thrive. I love diving in there in a space where it's like a little chaotic. There's a little craziness going on, and everybody's sort of like trying to figure out where it is we go. Where's the lead here? I love jumping in there and trying to find a solution and trying to kind of pick away and find and make sense of that chaos. So I'd say those are kind of the big reasons that keep me passionate in this. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I don't think it's perfect for everybody. It takes a certain type of person, but it's absolutely perfect for me. Yeah.
Being that go-to desk, fighting fire every day, no wonder you mentioned you are the sales ops MacGyver. What's the most paperclip and duct tape solution you've pulled off that ended up having a lasting business impact?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, right? I kind of put that title for myself as a little bit of a joke, but it's really true. And again, I think it rings true to a lot of people in operations is that specifically like RevOps and sales ops is you don't always have all the tools or the things at your disposal, right? A lot of times you're coming into a situation with a problem where there's nothing built out or you're realizing, hey, there's no process here at all. Um, and oftentimes you got to kind of, it's a joke, but like you got to put stuff together and use a paper clip sometimes. So it's, I wouldn't say in terms of like lasting effect or lasting change is always best because you don't want a paper clip solution for long term. But in general, you have to be agile. You have to be able to think of those things and be creative and figure out like how's the best way to get a solution here for what we need right now. And oftentimes you're working quickly because you need a solution fast. Like people can't work or people aren't going to get paid or things like that. So I'd say one recently that came up for me is we have all these brands, right? There's about 12 plus brands in EverPro. Everybody had their own compensation plan. They all had their own process for paying people out. They had their own process for sort of like everything when it came to commissions and compensation. So we needed to streamline that, and we did. And we worked really hard to get everybody sort of on these streamlined plans. There was still a few different plans for everybody, obviously, but we really cut that down and streamlined the process for it. But when it came to commissions, we didn't, and obviously we're getting a tool set up soon to do this. But in the interim, we didn't really have a tool to be paying out to like do all this calculation and put all this together every month to make sure we're paying people in the right way, being effective about it and not making mistakes. So I essentially, I mean, anybody can kind of build something out in Excel, but I really took the next step to build basically an app inside of Excel where I can very easily just take the data that gets submitted to me for on a formatted Excel spreadsheet that I gave the managers and the people that submit pay to me to just upload. And it spits out with all the individual different plans based on the people's employee ID and spits out all their pay, right? And then I can track all that back. Everything's locked in, so I know nothing can kind of get messed with. And I was really proud of this sort of sheet, this app I had kind of made inside of Excel, and it's been working great. So for the interim period here, I'd say that that's a good example of like, hey, what do I have to work with right now? How do I do this in an effective way that's going to work for everybody, especially something around pay, where you don't want to mess that up. You don't want to mess up paying people. That's like something I
Yep.
take very seriously. So I'd say that's a good example there. Obviously, not a long-term thing we'd want to keep and do this, but it saves me a massive amount of time every month when I need to do commissions. I probably save myself about 5 or 6 hours of work
Of course.
by just using this. So yeah.
Of course, building something is not easy at all. When designing compensation plans, you've been in sales, so you know the significance of compensation plans. How do you strike the right balance between simplicity and aligning incentives with business goals?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we kind of just went through this exercise, right? Like I was talking about, and there were some complicated plans out there. I'd say for a rep in any position, if you're a rep that's getting paid commission, if you're halfway through a month and it's confusing for you or you don't know how much currently you are going to get paid with the work that you've done for that month, there's been an error. Like somebody's made a mistake along the line. Um, so that's sort of my gauge there is like, can a rep easily in 3 or 4 minutes figure out currently where they're at and how much they're going to be getting paid? Like that's my goal is I want them to be able to easily see that. Well, and I think it's fairly easy to make sure that you're creating a plan that way that is simple, but also making sure that you're incentivizing the right things. So that comes down to figuring out like literally sitting there and bullet pointing what is it we're asking these guys to do? What should they be focused on doing every day when they come to work, right? And then creating that compensation and those incentives around those ideas, because the whole idea is with incentive is to incentivize somebody to do what you want them to do, right? That kind of sounds like a bad way of putting it, but that's what you're doing, right? So yeah, once you do that, you kind of narrow it down to the ones that are most important and effective, and in a way that you can streamline across as many of those plans as you can, so that it makes sense. Um, and then yeah, and then we look at it and we say, hey, is this a calculator that's very easy, or a calculation they could do even in their head? Is this something very easy somebody could use to figure out how much they get paid? And if we're there, then we've succeeded. Yeah.
Many teams track forecast and pipeline as we are speaking. You focus on productivity and revenue. How do you build forecasting systems that sales leaders rely on? Because it's complex, it's not easy.
Yeah, forecasting's great. It's like this little bit of science, little bit of art, little bit of gut feeling, yeah, I think forecasting in general might be one of my favorite aspects of the job. I feel like something that's always kind of evolving and getting better. And with the brands we've had here and what I've been working with, I think a lot of them, just because some of them that were coming on were much larger company now, but a lot of them were operating like more like a startup mentality, right? Some of them didn't really have a forecasting process at all. It's just not something they were used to doing. Some of them were kind of just doing commits, right? Or like weighted commits for different brands and stuff. So I think with that problem, to answer your question, number one, at least in a space that I'm in and what I'm dealing with, is number one is getting buy-in from the managers, right? Because you get buy-in from the managers on forecasting, and them seeing how important that is to do and how that helps them, right? That's if when you get buy-in from the managers, that's when you get buy-in from the reps, because they often follow what their manager is, what's important to them, right? So I'd say step one, trying to get buy-in. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, right? But step two is trying to figure out the model, right? And there's a bunch of different models out there, but you're trying to figure out what works best for your business. So we're actually in the middle of an exercise right now, again, reiterating and trying to better our forecasting and figure out, it's probably not a unique problem, but a lot of our brands have very short sales cycles, right? A lot of the deals we're closing, we've created like in that same week or in that same 2 weeks. So it could be very short, sales cycle for some of them. Some of them are very long. So we sort of have a mix there. But it's like, okay, how do we start looking earlier in the funnel? How do we start looking at the MQLs we're getting and the conversion rates from those, the conversion rate of the SQLs, and then continually pulling that data to look at those forecasts. And that kind of helps drive that and, give us a better glimpse at where it is we're going to land. So we're always going to be taking the commits in, right? And that sort of gut feeling. I think that's a piece of that model always. But it shouldn't be the end all be all. And just getting some rigor around like the actual data. And once you start getting wins and showing the managers and showing people that like, look, if we're, a week in or 2 weeks into the month and we can be really accurate in where we're going to land and show a red flag early that we need to pivot or focus on something else, or drive more or incentivize more, that's really powerful. And I think that's a really important tool that a manager should have. So
Yeah, it's a little bit of art, a little bit of science, and also a bit of gut. Very well put across. The next question is on change management. When pushing for changes that impact multiple teams, what strategies have helped you influence senior leadership and gain buy-in across departments? Because dealing with people, leaders, getting their buy-ins, again, it's very complex.
it is complex. And I mean, that's why I love RevOps, because the whole idea there is oftentimes different departments are working in silos, right? Oftentimes, sales, success, marketing, they have their own goals, their own strategy, their own, what they're working towards. And everybody in the back of their mind is like, yeah, we got to work together, but oftentimes they're not. And that's really where RevOps comes in and can streamline across all of those things and get people working together and to a unified goal. But in terms of, trying to drive change or come with a new idea, I would say if I was giving advice to somebody is number one, in these roles, as we always talk about, data is your best friend and we need to make data-driven decisions. So I would never show up to meeting saying like, hey, I have a feeling that, the BDR team is focused on the wrong thing here. I think they should start focusing on this because it's not based on any data. It's based on, I could be absolutely right. I could be totally right. And I just have been around a long time and know the answers, right? But I'm not going to get a lot of buy-in from folks if I'm doing that. But what am I? I'm a leader in sales ops, and one of my big parts of my job is data, and I should be looking at every problem from a data-driven approach, right? So I typically would start by looking at the data, making sure that it's backing my assumption, right? My theory there. And if it is, then I try to look at that data to figure out what the best, path forward would be. Once I have that, I will put that together in a, I always say data by design, putting data together in a clear, concise way that it makes sense. I don't think showing up to a meeting with slides with a whole bunch of stuff and words all over it, numbers, can be really tough for people to digest. People retain about 30% of what you say to them, right? So I'll come in with very concise data that backs up what I feel like we should be doing, and get buy-in that way. And at that point, it's hard for anybody to disagree with you. It's hard for them to not get buy-in when you are literally showing them data right there, telling them that this is the right thing to do. So that's typically my approach.
Looking at data first seems to be the secret sauce for getting buy-ins internally. You mentioned your background in sales gave you unique edge in ops, and of course, we also discussed there's no school or college to learn operations, and that many people want to break into sales ops or revenue operations today. What advice would you give to someone looking to get into sales operations in 2025 and beyond, especially with AI reshaping workflows and decisions?
That's a great question. And actually have this summer, I have 4 interns working for me. They're kind of partly on me and the sales enablement director. And they're just great, right? And there's something so cool about interns is they have this hunger that I rarely see in folks nowadays, but like they come in and they just want to learn. They're so excited about every little thing. Like give them a task that anybody else would be like, dude, really, I got to do this. And they're so excited about it, right? So this speaks kind of close to like my heart right now, where I'm at with these interns. But in terms of advice and getting into this, I would say try to find a passion, right? If this is not something, sales ops, RevOps is not really something you can go into and not be interested in it or not be something you're passionate about. It's something that sometimes you're going to bang your head against the wall. Sometimes you're going to love it. Sometimes you're going to hate it, but that's all a part of it. And you need to be able to come in and be okay in chaotic situations and be okay in, where you feel confident coming in and figuring out, hey, how do I piece this chaos out to find a good solution? So with that said, the biggest piece of advice I could give somebody that's trying to break into this or thinking about doing it, if that is something they feel like would be a passion of theirs, would be, to your point, figuring out how to use AI effectively. The next 2 years is going to look incredibly different for a lot of roles. I think sales ops and rev ops is going to change a lot, but for the better. I think this is the type of thing where it's going to make people in strategic roles like this far more agile and be able to do a whole lot more. But I see too many people kind of sleeping on it. It seems like everybody's talking about it, right? It's you open up your feed on Instagram or LinkedIn and like there's always posts about AI stuff's going on. But really when you're talking to people, it feels like a lot of people are waiting. They're like waiting for the change to happen, or they're waiting for, they're like, no, AI is coming, so they're like ready for it, or maybe they're using ChatGPT a little bit here and there and dabbling. But I think they need to really put their foot on the gas here right now. Like we're already a little late on it if you're just thinking about this now, but you should be figuring out how AI daily all the time is helping you, making you more effective. If I can save more for somebody like me and I'm underwater constantly, I often have like too much to do in one day and I have to prioritize what's most important to get done in that day. AI makes that a whole lot easier for me. I can often get things done a whole lot faster that would have taken me a lot more time, which means I can get more done in a day. So I would say get really good at prompt engineering, figure out how to prompt well, figure out how to use AI for things. Unless you're dabbling in there and messing around and figuring out what it can do, you're not going to know, because you don't know what you don't know. So you have to really play around with it and really dig deep there to figure out what kind of tools you can pull out of it. And there's a lot you can do in there I don't think people realize. So that would be my biggest advice to anybody trying to get in here is figure out AI, figure out how to use that effectively, and keep playing around with it.
Being an early adopter definitely gives an edge. Three key pieces of advice you would like to share with the listeners who aspire to excel in the field of sales ops, Austin?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so three pieces. I'd say number one, fall in love with with the problem, not so much the tool. I think people oftentimes get, and it's cool. There's a lot of really cool tools out there. There's really great things to use. Again, we're just talking about ChatGPT, right? But don't as much fall in love with the tool as you are with the problem you're trying to solve. I think specifically in these roles, oftentimes that's what we're doing. We're creating new process. We're solving issues. We're taking roadblocks out from people. So number one, I would try to figure out how to love the problem and figure out how to solve the problems well, if you're going to succeed. Next thing I would say is try to build trust with your teams and people you work with that you are the source of truth. You're the source to go to for answers for things, right? I think too much, especially in orgs that have a lot of structure, my org that has a lot of different kind of brands in there, it can be confusing sometimes on who to go to for answers, who to go to figure stuff out. And I try really hard to not ever, even if it's something a little outside my wheelhouse, I try to never just say, hey, sorry, no, that's not my problem, or you'll have to go to somebody else for that. I always try to find a solution for somebody and help them, or I'll literally open up a group chat with somebody I think that can answer the question, and I'll ask it for them and kind of push them along. So I think being that person that people feel really comfortable coming to for answers, or knowing you're either going to have the answer or help them find the answer is a really important piece of the job. And then last thing I would say is I balance sort of speed with scalability. So in our job, again, we're trying to scale, right? Which is, when we're scaling, it's not spending more money, but making more money, right? It's like, how do we find opportunities with what we currently have here, but doing that in a smart way, right? So I think it's just, we can get stuck on building really quickly and doing things really fast, but I think you need to do it in a right way. Like my example of building the commission plans, right? I could have done that a lot faster in more of a hacky way to get the job done, but it wouldn't have helped me in the long run. It wouldn't have helped me in the following month, right? And it could have made me more prone for errors, which is something really important that I shouldn't be having when I'm trying to pay people, right? So I think it's a balance between that, being effective and balancing effectiveness and speed when scaling.
Yeah. Falling in love with the problem, becoming that go-to person, and finding that balance between scale and as well as efficiency. Those are golden points, Austin. Well, that brings us